The stars stretched endlessly in front of David as he stared out of the ship's small window. The vastness of space was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. They had escaped the Zorothians, at least for now. But David knew this wasn't the end. The Zorothians were ruthless, and they would never stop until they found Ilara. Beside him, Ilara sat at the control panel, her eyes scanning the stars as she navigated the ship further into deep space. The silence between them felt heavy, filled, with the weight of everything they had just gone through. David could still feel the tension in his chest, the adrenaline that had been pumping through his veins during their escape. But now, the ship was calm, and so was he. "We're safe for now," Ilara finally said, breaking the silence. Her voice was quieter than usual, and David could sense the exhaustion in her tone. She had been running for so long, and even though they had just narrowly escaped death, the battle wasn't over. Not yet. David nodded but didn't respond immediately. He wasn't sure what to say. What could he say? His whole life had changed since he found Ilara in that pod. Now they were light years away from Earth, with nowhere to go and no clear plan. "We can't stay here forever," Ilara continued, her voice steady despite the situation. "The Zorothians will come for us again. They have more resources, more power than we can imagine. We can't outrun them forever." David glanced at her, his brow furrowed. "What do we do then?" he asked, his voice tight with frustration. "You said they would destroy everything. If we can't outrun them, what hope do we have?" Ilara sighed, her gaze shifting to the control panel in front of her. She was quiet for a long moment before speaking again. "I need to return home," she said softly. "I can't run forever. I can't hide in the shadows, waiting for someone else to fight for me. I need to face them." David's heart sank as he processed her words. She was willing to go back? After everything the Zorothians had done to her people, she wanted to return to them. "No," David said quickly, his voice sharp. "You can't go back. They'll just capture you again. You'll be walking into their trap." Ilara turned to face him, her expression soft but firm. "I have no choice. If I stay out here, in hiding, I will never be free. I will never be able to rebuild my people, my world. I have to go back and face them. It's the only way." David shook his head. He understood what she was saying, but the idea of letting her return to the Zorothians after everything they had been through felt wrong. He couldn't just stand by and let her go back into danger. "You're not alone in this," David said, his voice strong. "I'll go with you. I'll help you. Whatever it takes." Ilara's eyes softened, a mix of gratitude and sadness in her expression. "David, you've already done so much for me. You risked your life to save me. But you don't belong in my world. You don't belong with the Zorothians." David stepped closer, his determination unwavering. "I don't care about belonging," he said, his voice low but resolute. "I care about you, and I'm not going to let you face them alone. You don't have to do this by yourself." Ilara studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his words, before she finally nodded. "Then we fight together," she said quietly. "But you need to understand the risks. If we go back, we may not survive. The Zorothians are brutal. They won't hesitate." David didn't flinch. "I understand, and I'm willing to take that risk." For a moment, Ilara didn't speak. She seemed lost in thought, her gaze distant, as if she was considering something, far beyond the ship's small cabin. Finally, she spoke again, her voice quieter than before. "There is a way," she said. "A way to defeat the Zorothians. But it's not easy. I'll need your help, David. I'll need you to trust me." David's curiosity piqued. "What do we need to do?" Ilara turned back to the controls, tapping a few keys on the panel in front of her. The ship's interface shifted, revealing a map of the galaxy. David watched closely as she navigated the stars, pinpointing a location far beyond their current position. "There is an ancient weapon," Ilara explained, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the map. "A weapon that could destroy the Zorothian fleet. It's hidden in a forgotten system, one that no one has visited in centuries. It's our only chance." David leaned in, studying the map. "A weapon? But why isn't it already in the hands of your people?" Ilara's eyes darkened. "Because my people were betrayed. The Zorothians destroyed my planet before we could find it. I'm the only one left who knows where it is." David's heart clenched at the thought of what Ilara had lost. She was alone, the last of her kind, and yet she still had the strength to fight for something greater than herself. "We'll find it," David said without hesitation. "We'll find this weapon, and we'll stop the Zorothians." Ilara looked at him, her expression softer now, the weight of her burden easing for just a moment. "Thank you," she whispered. But David didn't want her thanks. He wanted her to know that he wasn't doing this because it was the right thing. He wasn't doing it because it was the heroic thing to do. He was doing it because somehow she had become someone worth fighting for. He had grown to care for her, and he wasn't going to let her go without a fight. "I'm with you," he said. "No matter what happens." Ilara gave him a small smile, her eyes full of determination. "Then let's do this." The ship hummed softly as they set their course, moving toward the distant stars. The Zorothians had not won, not yet, and David knew that together, he and Ilara could face whatever came next. They had survived the impossible once before. They could do it again, and as the ship sped off into the unknown, David couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. They still had a chance. Against all odds, they still had a chance to win. David's heart pounded in his chest as the ship shot through space, racing toward the edges of Earth's atmosphere. He could feel the powerful hum of the engines beneath his feet, a reminder of how fast they were moving. The stars outside the window blurred, streaking by in long, bright lines. Ilara was in complete control, her hands moving with skill over the alien technology, her eyes fixed on the dark expanse of space ahead. The Zorothian ships were still chasing them. He could see them in the distance, their huge forms moving fast. The sound of their engines, distant but unmistakable, sent a chill down his spine. David knew that if they didn't break free soon, they were done for. He had no idea how much longer they could keep evading them. But Ilara didn't seem scared. Her expression was calm, focused. She had faced much worse than this, and she wasn't about to back down now. David could feel her resolve. He had seen it from the first moment they met. She had lost everything, but she had refused to let it break her. And now, she was leading them to safety. "They're closing in," David said, his voice tight. He was trying to keep his fear in check, but the pressure was building. The Zorothians were relentless. He couldn't imagine what it had been like. For Ilara, running for her life for so long, hiding from enemies who wouldn't hesitate to destroy everything she had once known. "We're almost there," Ilara replied without looking at him. Her hands moved quickly across the control panel. "Once we reach the outer boundary of the system, their ships won't be able to track us, but we need to go faster. They're adapting to our movements." David nodded, understanding the danger. The Zorothians had advanced technology, far beyond anything Earth had. Their ability to track the ship, to anticipate their every move, was terrifying. But Ilara had something the Zorothians didn't have, knowledge of their own technology. She was the key to escaping. The ship lurched again, throwing David against the seat. He gripped the armrests, heart racing as the ship shot forward, accelerating, faster than he thought possible. He could see the Zorothian ships falling behind, their massive engines sputtering as they struggled to keep up with the smaller, faster ship. "They're slowing down," David said, relief creeping into his voice. He hadn't realized how badly he had been holding his breath until now. Ilara's lips curved into a faint, determined smile. They won't give up. But we have the advantage now. They can't match our speed. The ship continued to speed, through space, breaking free of the Earth's gravitational pull. The vastness of the universe stretched out before them. The stars, once distant points of light, were now close enough to touch. David couldn't help but stare in awe. He had always dreamed of space, of exploring the stars, but nothing had prepared him for this rush, this sense of freedom. It was like nothing he had ever known. "We're almost there," Ilara said again, her voice steady despite the strain of the chase. She looked over at David, her expression softening. "Thank you, David. I couldn't have done this without you." David shook his head, not knowing how to respond. He had done what anyone would have done in his place. He hadn't been trying to be a hero. He had just been trying to survive, to protect Ilara. But hearing her say those words made him feel something he hadn't expected. Pride. They had made it this far together, and they were still alive. That was something worth fighting for. Suddenly, the ship jerked, and a bright flash of light filled the cockpit. The Zorothians had fired a blast in their direction. David gritted his teeth as the ship rocked, but the shields held strong, absorbing the blast. The ship's shields flickered, but they didn't fail. It was a close call, but it wasn't enough to stop them. "They're desperate," Ilara muttered, eyes flashing with anger. "They're not going to give up until they have me." David clenched his fists. He couldn't let that happen, not after everything they had been through. He wouldn't let them take her. He wouldn't let them destroy everything she had fought for. The Zorothian ships were getting closer again, but this time, Ilara wasn't just running. She was preparing to fight back. She tapped a few buttons on the control panel, and suddenly, the ship shuddered. The engines roared as the ship's speed increased dramatically, far beyond what David had thought was possible. The Zorothians, in pursuit of their prey, were caught off guard by the sudden change. They had no time to adjust to the ship's new speed, and they fell behind again. Ilara's ship was too fast, too unpredictable. "We're almost at the edge of the system," Ilara said, her voice sharp with focus. "Just a little longer." David could see the stars outside, growing brighter and closer as they reached the outer boundary of the solar system. He couldn't believe they were this close to escaping. It felt too easy, too unreal. But then the unexpected happened. A loud warning alarm blared through the ship, cutting through the silence. David's heart skipped a beat. The Zorothians had launched a last-ditch attack, sending a massive energy blast straight toward the ship. Ilara's face turned pale as she worked quickly, trying to counter the blast. Her hands flew over the controls, but the blast was too powerful, too fast. David's pulse quickened as he braced himself for impact. Just as the blast was about to hit, something incredible happened. The ship's engines flared brighter than ever before, and a strange force field enveloped them. The blast collided with the field, and to David's amazement, it didn't do any damage at all. The energy rippled and dissipated like water against a rock. Ilara's eyes widened, and for the first time, David saw fear in her expression. "It's impossible," she whispered. "They didn't know we had this technology." David stared at her in confusion, but before he could ask, the ship surged forward with a burst of speed. The Zorothian ships were left behind, helpless in their pursuit. The shields held strong, and the ship continued to race toward the safety of deep space. "We did it?" Ilara said, a mix of disbelief and relief in her voice. David couldn't believe it. They had done it. They had escaped the Zorothians. For the first time in days, David allowed himself to relax, even if just for a moment. They had survived. They had won. But deep down, David knew this was only the beginning. The Zorothians would come after them again. But for now, they were safe, and that was enough. The forest was dense, and the night felt suffocating as David followed Alara through the underbrush. The hum of distant engines grew louder, the sound of the Zorothian fleet closing in on them. David could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. They were running out of time, and the only chance they had was to reach the ship and get off Earth before it was too late. Alara moved quickly, her silver skin glowing faintly in the darkness, guiding David with a quiet but intense determination. He followed as best as he could, his heart racing in his chest. He had never imagined his life would lead him to a situation like this. Just days ago, he had been a mechanic, content with his simple life. Now, he was running through the woods, with an alien princess, trying to outrun an enemy that seemed to have no weakness. They reached a small clearing, and Alara stopped suddenly, her body tense. She raised her hand, signaling David to stop. He did, instinctively holding his breath. The ship was just ahead, hidden behind a large cluster of trees. It was sleek and metallic, unlike anything David had ever seen. Its surface shimmered in the low light, and the air around it felt charged with energy. Alara moved toward it, her steps light and silent, but David hesitated. He had never been this close to alien technology. The ship was clearly advanced, far beyond anything Earth had. He was in awe, but at the same time, a sense of dread gnawed at him. They were close now, closer than ever before, and the Zorothians were almost upon them. As if on cue, a loud roar echoed through the forest, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. The Zorothians were near. David could feel the ground vibrate beneath his feet as their massive war machines neared. They were closing in faster than he had expected. "They're here," Alara said quietly, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We don't have much time." David's heart pounded as he moved toward the ship, staying close to Alara. They reached the vessel, and Alara quickly moved to a hidden panel on the side. She pressed a sequence of buttons, and with a soft hiss, the hatch opened. "Get in," Alara ordered, her eyes scanning the dark woods for any sign of the Zorothians. "Hurry!" David didn't need to be told twice. He climbed inside, his mind racing. As soon as he was in, Alara followed, sealing the hatch behind them. The inside of the ship was unlike anything David had imagined. It was sleek and futuristic, with soft blue lights glowing along the walls. The controls were alien to him, but Alara moved with confidence, quickly adjusting the settings. "We're not safe yet," Alara said, her eyes locked on the control panel. "This ship is fast, but we need to stay under their radar. If we can get high enough into the atmosphere, we might be able to slip past them." David nodded, though he wasn't sure how much of a chance they had. He had no idea what kind of technology the Zorothians possessed, or how powerful their fleet was. But he trusted Alara. He had to. The ship's engines hummed to life, and the craft slowly lifted off the ground. The trees below them shrank as the ship ascended, rising higher and higher into the night sky. David glanced out the small window, watching as the dark expanse of the forest disappeared beneath them. The Zorothians were closing in, their ships now visible in the distance. David could see their enormous, menacing forms gliding through the sky, scanning the ground for any sign of movement. "Stay calm," Alara said, her voice low but firm. "We can't let them see us. If we can make it to the outer atmosphere, they won't be able to track us." David clenched his fists. His mind raced, but he couldn't help feeling a sense of awe. The ship felt like it was alive, responding to Alara's commands with precision. The technology was so advanced it felt like magic, but magic couldn't save them now. Only quick thinking and the right moves could. The Zorothian ships were getting closer. David could hear their engines roar in the distance, and his stomach twisted with fear. The Zorothians were relentless. They wouldn't stop until they found Alara. The ship shuddered slightly as it pushed its way into the atmosphere, the stars outside growing brighter as they gained speed. David's heart raced as he glanced over at Ilara, who was focused on the control panel. Her fingers flew over the buttons, her expression intense. She was working quickly, trying to keep them out of the Zorothians' reach. Almost there, Ilara muttered under her breath, her voice steady despite the pressure. David watched her, impressed by her calm demeanor. She was facing down enemies who could destroy entire planets, and yet she didn't flinch. She was determined to survive, and that determination was something David admired. Suddenly, the ship lurched, throwing David off balance. He grabbed the nearest seat for support, his pulse quickening. The Zorothians had found them. "They're firing at us!" David shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Ilara's expression didn't change. She calmly tapped a few buttons on the control panel, and the ship's shields activated with a hum. The first blast hit the shields with a loud crack, but the ship held steady. "We can't take too many hits like that," Ilara said, her voice tight with urgency. "I'm going to have to accelerate." "Hold on!" David did as she instructed, bracing himself as the ship shot forward, faster than he had ever experienced. The world outside blurred as they sped through the atmosphere, the Zorothian ships hot on their tail. "We need to break through," Ilara said, her voice tense. "If we can make it to the outer edges of the system, they won't be able to track us anymore." David nodded, knowing that this was their last chance. The Zorothians were powerful, but they weren't invincible. Ilara had been right. If they could just get far enough away, they might have a shot at escaping. The ship surged forward, and David could feel the weight of the world lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to hope. He didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time, it felt like they might actually survive. The next few days were a blur for David. Every moment, every second was filled with thoughts of Ilara. He couldn't stop thinking about the alien woman he had found in the pod and the terrifying threats she had spoken of. Zorothians. He had never heard of them before, but now they were the only thing that seemed to matter. David was trying to keep it all together, but it wasn't easy. He had no idea how to help Ilara, how to protect her from these mysterious enemies. Everything about her was foreign to him. The technology in the pod, her strange abilities, even her language. But despite all the unknowns, there was one thing that was clear. He had to keep her safe. Ilara had insisted that she couldn't stay in the small town much longer. It wasn't safe. She said the Zorothians could track her down using technology far beyond anything Earth had. They had destroyed her home planet, her entire world, and they wouldn't stop until they found her again. David had tried to convince her to stay, to let him figure something out. But Ilara was resolute. She knew how powerful the Zorothians were. She had seen their destruction firsthand. They would stop at nothing to reclaim her, to finish what they had started. She wouldn't let David get caught in the crossfire. "I have to leave," Ilara had told him one evening, her eyes serious. "You don't understand. They are everywhere. They can find me anywhere. If I stay, they will destroy everything around me." David hated the look in her eyes when she said that. It wasn't just fear. It was the kind of fear that came from having nothing left to lose. Ilara had already lost everything. She had already been through hell. Now, she was willing to do whatever it took to protect those she cared about, even if it meant leaving Earth and never looking back. But David wasn't ready to let her go. "We'll figure it out," he said, determination in his voice. "We'll hide you. We'll make sure they can't find you." Ilara shook her head. "You don't understand. They have armies, fleets, entire worlds at their disposal. You can't hide from them forever." David had no idea what to do. How could he help her? How could he protect her when she had already faced enemies more powerful than he could imagine? That night, as David sat in his small workshop, he heard a faint noise. It was a sound he hadn't heard before, a low, almost mechanical hum. His heart skipped a beat, and he immediately stood up, rushing to the window. He peered outside, but the night was still and silent. He stepped outside, his pulse quickening. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was watching him. Then he saw it. A flash of light streaked across the sky, low and fast. At first, he thought it was a shooting star, but the light was too controlled, too deliberate. It moved with purpose. David's mind raced. The Zorothians, they had found him. They had found Ilara. Without a second thought, he ran to the small cabin where Ilara was staying. The cabin was on the edge of town, far enough to keep them hidden, but close enough for David to get to her quickly. He threw open the door, panting, for breath. Ilara was standing in the center of the room, her eyes fixed on the sky outside. She was already alert, her body tense with fear. "They're coming," she said, her voice barely a whisper. David nodded. "I saw something in the sky. It wasn't a meteor, it was them." Ilara didn't waste any time. She grabbed her small bag of belongings and moved toward the door. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice sharp. "We need to leave. Now." David followed her out the door and into the night. The air was cold, and the ground beneath. Their feet was soft with the dew of the evening. The trees loomed over them, casting long shadows. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Ilara led the way, her steps sure and fast. She knew the forest well, too well. It was clear that she had been running for a long time. The forest felt like a maze, to David. But Ilara moved through it with ease, her movements fluid and confident. David tried to keep up, his mind racing. The Zorothians were out there somewhere, looking for her. And now, they were coming for him, too. He had no idea how they would find them, but he knew it was only a matter of time before they did. After what felt like hours of walking, Ilara finally stopped. She turned to David, her face pale but determined. "We need to get to the ship," she said. "It's the only way. If we can reach it, I can get us off this planet." David's heart skipped a beat. A ship? She had a ship? How had he missed that? "I don't have much time," Ilara continued, her voice tight with urgency. "The Zorothians are fast. They won't be far behind." David didn't question her. He trusted her. He had to. Together they made their way deeper into the forest, the trees now thick and dense, blocking out most of the light. David could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He was no hero. He was just a mechanic, a simple man who had been pulled into something far bigger than himself. But as he looked at Ilara, he knew he couldn't back down. Not now, not when she was depending on him. The sound of distant engines hummed through the night air, sending a chill down David's spine. The Zorothians were closer now. Their pursuit was relentless. David's thoughts raced as he pushed forward, staying close to Ilara. They reached a clearing in the forest. In the center, hidden beneath the overgrowth, was a sleek, metallic ship. Its surface gleamed in the dim light, and it looked as though it had been waiting for them all along. David stopped in his tracks, staring at the ship. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, far more advanced than anything Earth had ever created. The realization hit him. Ilara wasn't just a lost alien. She was someone with the power to change the course of the galaxy. And now, she was trusting him to help her escape. "We're not out of danger yet," Ilara said, her voice sharp. "But we're close. We can do this." David nodded, his heart pounding. They had no choice but to move forward. The Zorothians were coming, and the only way to survive was to keep going. David's heart raced as he stared at the alien woman, her glowing eyes fixed on him with an intensity he couldn't understand. She was still lying in the pod, her long silver hair flowing around her like a river of light. He felt an overwhelming mix of awe and fear, but there was also a deep curiosity that made him hesitate. Was she a threat? Or was she something entirely different, something that humanity had never encountered before? For a moment, neither of them moved. The quiet hum of the pod filled the air, and David found himself frozen in place, his mind scrambling to make sense of what was happening. The alien woman blinked slowly, as if adjusting to the world around her. Then her lips parted and she spoke again, this time in a voice that sounded like music, a soft, melodious tone that seemed to echo in the back of David's mind. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice filled with confusion. David's mouth went dry. He tried to speak, but for a moment, his words caught in his throat. He had never imagined he'd find himself in this situation, standing face to face with an alien, someone from beyond the stars. He had no idea what to say, or how to respond. I'm David," he finally managed to say. His voice was shaky, but it was enough to get the words out. "I found this pod out in the forest. I didn't know you were in there." The alien woman blinked again, her expression a mix of curiosity and confusion. She sat up slowly, her movements graceful and fluid, almost as if she were made of something lighter than human flesh. The pod around her seemed to respond to her presence, its glowing markings pulsing as she moved. She reached up, her hand hovering near her face, as if she were trying to understand the strange sensations of being awake. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice soft but clear. There was a sense of wonder in her tone, as if she were discovering the world for the first time. "What is this place?" David took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "This is Earth. You're on Earth." The alien woman tilted her head slightly, as though processing the word. "Earth," she repeated. "I do not know this place. I was in another world, but it seems I have escaped." David frowned, his curiosity growing. "Escaped? From what?" Her eyes flickered, as if a memory had stirred within her. She looked away for a moment, her gaze distant, like she was lost in thought. When she spoke again, her voice was tinged with sadness. "I am Ilara," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "I was a prisoner, held by my own people. They wanted to control me, to use me for their own purposes. I was their ruler, but not anymore." David's heart sank as he realized the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just some random alien who had accidentally ended up on Earth. This was someone who had been captured, someone who had suffered, and now somehow she had ended up here, on his planet. "I had to run," Ilara continued, her voice quiet but determined. "My enemies took everything from me. They destroyed my world, my people. They betrayed me, and now I am alone." David didn't know what to say. His mind was spinning with questions, but at the same time, he felt an overwhelming sense of empathy for her. She had been through something unimaginable, something that most humans could never understand. And here she was, stranded on Earth, with no one to turn to. "I'm sorry," David said, his voice soft. "I don't know what happened to you, but you're safe here. For now." Ilara didn't seem to hear him. She stood up from the pod, her movements still graceful but now more purposeful. She looked around, her eyes scanning the forest beyond the clearing where the pod had landed. She reached out a hand, as if testing the air, and then took a step forward. "I need to go," she said, her voice filled with resolve. "I can't stay here. They will find me. They will come for me." David felt a surge of panic. Who will come for you?" Ilara's eyes flickered with an intensity that made David take a step back. "My enemies, the Zorothians. They have no mercy. They will destroy everything in their path to find me." The name sent a chill down David's spine. He had no idea who the Zorothians were, but he could tell from Ilara's voice that they were not to be trifled with. He felt a strange mix of anger and fear welling up inside him. How could anyone, Any race be so cruel? And how was he supposed to help this alien woman, this stranger who had just appeared in his life, escape from such a threat? "I can't just leave you out there," David said, his voice more determined now. "We'll figure something out. We'll find a way to hide you or fight back." Ilara turned to him, her eyes searching his face. For the first time, since she had woken up, she seemed to soften. There was a flicker of something, trust maybe, in her eyes, but it was fleeting. "You would help me?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. David nodded, his jaw set. "I don't know what I can do, but I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." Ilara studied him for a long moment before finally nodding. "Then I will trust you, David. But know this. You have no idea what you're getting into. The Zorothians are relentless. If they find us—" She didn't finish the sentence, but David could see the fear in her eyes. The fear of someone who had already lost everything. "I won't let them take you," David said firmly. "Not while I'm still breathing." Ilara looked at him, and for the briefest moment, her eyes softened. "Thank you," she whispered. Then her gaze turned back to the distant horizon, and her expression hardened once more. David could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had just become a part of something far bigger than he could ever have imagined. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let Ilara face this alone. Not while he was still standing. As he looked into her eyes, he knew his life would never be the same. The moment the pod had opened, everything had changed. And he was ready to face whatever came next, if only to protect the mysterious alien who had trusted him with her life. David had always been a simple man, content with his work as a mechanic in a small town on Earth. He was the kind of person who found peace in the hum of an engine, the smell of motor oil, and the satisfaction of fixing something that was broken. Life was steady, predictable, and safe. But that afternoon, everything changed. It was a typical Saturday when David noticed something unusual. He had just finished fixing an old car in the shop when he stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows on the ground. As he wiped the sweat off his brow, something caught his eye. At first, it seemed like a strange trick of the light, but as he looked closer, his heart skipped a beat. Out in the distance, near the edge of the forest that bordered the town, there was something gleaming. It was far enough away that he couldn't make out the details, but it was unmistakable. A large, metallic object, reflecting the sunlight in a way that made it appear almost alive. The object was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Curiosity tugged at him. He had to see it up close. Without a second thought, David grabbed a flashlight and walked toward the forest. The path was familiar to him, though he rarely ventured that far into the woods. As he got closer, the object became clearer. It wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a pod, sleek and smooth, with glowing markings running along its surface. The markings pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. The pod looked almost alien. David stood there for a moment, feeling a mixture of awe and apprehension. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he took in the sight. This was no ordinary piece of junk. He had no idea how it had gotten here, or what it was doing in the middle of the forest. But one thing was certain, it wasn't from Earth. He stepped closer, his boots crunching softly on the dry leaves beneath him. The closer he got, the more surreal it all seemed. The pod was about 10 feet long, shaped like a small, elongated egg. Its surface was smooth, almost reflective, with intricate patterns etched into it. The markings were a strange mix of symbols, none of which David recognized. The pod seemed to hum, a soft vibration that he could feel in his chest. David reached out to touch it, his hand hovering just above the surface. It was warm, not like metal that had been in the sun, but like something that was alive. His pulse quickened. Was this some kind of alien technology? Or had someone else built it? Someone who had left it here? His fingers brushed against the surface, and to his surprise, the pod reacted. The markings on its surface shifted and began to glow brighter, almost like they were responding to his touch. The pod's sleek surface slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a dark interior. David's heart pounded in his chest. He had never seen anything like this. Part of him wanted to run, to turn around and walk away, but another part of him, a deeper part, urged him to take a closer look. He stepped inside the pod, carefully avoiding the edges. The air inside was cool, and a faint, sweet scent lingered. In the atmosphere, his flashlight flickered, casting shadows on the walls of the pod. It was more advanced than anything he could have imagined, far beyond anything Earth had ever created. The walls were lined with strange, intricate controls, some of which pulsed with light. There were no seats, no visible windows, only the glowing, softly humming technology that filled the space. David's eyes scanned the pod's interior, searching for anything that might give him a clue as to what it was. As he moved toward the back of the pod, his flashlight's beam landed on something that made him freeze. A figure lay inside, unmoving. At first, David thought it was just some kind of equipment or cargo, but as his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he saw something that sent a shock through his body. This wasn't a machine. This was a person, or at least something that looked like a person. The figure was humanoid, with long, flowing hair that shimmered faintly in the low light. Their skin was a pale silver, smooth and almost translucent, like it was made of something other than human flesh. David's breath caught in his throat as he realized it was an alien, someone or something that wasn't from Earth. The alien woman lay in a state of stasis, her chest rising and falling gently as if she were in a deep sleep. Her features were delicate, almost ethereal. Her face was serene, and her eyes were closed, though David couldn't help but wonder if they would open at any moment. He took a step back, his mind racing. What was this? How had it come to Earth? And why was this alien, this beautiful, mysterious creature here? David's hands trembled as he moved closer, unsure whether to touch her or not. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The pod had opened for him, and now he was face to face with something extraordinary, something that had been hidden from humanity for who knows how long. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft sound, a faint beeping coming from the pod's controls. It seemed as if the pod had detected his presence and was starting to activate. The alien woman stirred, her eyelids fluttering as if she were slowly waking up from a long, deep sleep. David froze, unsure of what to do. He didn't know whether to run, stay, or try to help her, but before he could make a decision, her eyes opened. They were luminous, like twin orbs of light, scanning him with an intensity that made his heart race. She blinked, and then, in a voice that sounded almost musical, she spoke. "Who are you?" David's mouth went dry. He could barely comprehend what was happening. This alien, this incredible being, was speaking to him. And in that moment, he realized that his life would never be the same again.